When you're lost in the darkness, look for the light. Welcome back, everyone, to this week's episode of the ClickerCast, your weekly show where myself, Chris, alongside my fellow clicker, Richie, welcome back.
Hello, everyone.
Join me and you, the wonderful community, live every Tuesday right here on youtube.com/Helix Plays Games. Do we plow games, Richie? Or do we play games?
We did play Farming Simulator as part of our first ever live stream, so we can plow games.
That's right, we can plow games, but more importantly, we play games here at Helix Plays Games. It's been a long day for me, everybody, so apologies as we get into the show. Thank you, of course, for joining us. If you haven't done so already, do click like, subscribe, and that bell so you're kept in the loop with all the great content we do here, like our other shows, which some of you might like to check out. We do a weekly PlayStation podcast called Talking the PS that goes up every Tuesday, actually the same day the show goes live. We also have our weekly Xbox podcast, the X Pass podcast, where me, Richie, and Rob round up all the Xbox news for your listening and viewing pleasure. Or, of course, like all of our shows, they are available digitally up there in the clouds on your podcast preference of choice. So do check them out there. If you're on the move, if you're one of those wireless people out there, you're not tied to Bill or Frank's radio service, you can go out there and do what you want in the car, just like Joel and Ellie did in this week's episode, which, of course, Richie, episode 4, entitled, see what I mean? Brain's not working. I've got a fungal infection that's working its way through my skull. It's going to pop out, and by week 9, episode 9, I'll be a full-on bloater or something, maybe. Well, that's sometimes how I feel when Christmas comes around. Anyway, this title for the episode, it's a bit of a weird one because I looked around a couple of places, as I do when I do the thumbnails for the show, and it has several names. If you look at the Radio Times, it was called Please Hold My Hand. If you looked on other websites, some American sites, it says Please Hold Onto My Hand. And then when it actually streamed, now it seems to have settled on Please Hold To My Hand, which doesn't grammatically sound correct, but
yeah, I think that's why everyone's made the mistake, because the episode title has always been "Please Hold To My Hand." It's in reference to a song title,
which we'll get into when we get into the show.
But yeah,
it's just grammatically it's weird and it sounds weird, and apologies if is the thumbnail right or wrong for this episode. Either way, it doesn't matter.
It's wrong.
We're living in a
post. The live stream is right.
Brilliant. Well, we're living in a post-apocalyptic world, so nothing matters. No rules. People don't adhere to rules, Richie. The infected don't. The people who break into quarantine zones don't, and neither did Joel and Ellie to some degree this episode. But that's what we're here for, everyone, to break it down. So thank you very much once again for joining us. And before we get into the thick of the show and our first impressions, we also have to acknowledge that next week's episode is actually coming a little bit early. So thanks to the Super Bowl that's happening over in the United States next week, that means that this week's episode by HBO has been moved. So for those of you out there maybe thinking this episode was a little bit shorter, you wanted a longer one, or maybe like myself felt this was maybe a 1 out of 2 part episodic thing, which we'll drill into, then fear not, you don't have to wait much longer, because in fact we're getting this episode over in the United States on Friday night, in fact. In the UK, we're getting it Saturday, 2 a.m. in the morning. So me and Richie thought, why not bring next week's episode a little bit earlier? So we're aiming to do this next week's episode of the ClickerCast, actually this same week, this coming Sunday. So don't worry, You're getting it early, you're not getting it late, but it gives us a chance to talk about it a little bit closer to the launch of the actual episode. We don't want you guys watching and then having to wait 3 whole days for us to break down and review it with you, the lovely audience. So fear not.
It's also just a bit more convenient for both our schedules.
It is, yeah. For our live streams and our other recordings, it works out quite well for us, in fact. So join us again Sunday. We'll clarify the time a bit closer to the time. But yes, cannot wait. Looking forward to get into it, and of course seeing the follow-on from this week's episode in particular. Richie, let's get into it then. We've got a lovely audience out there. A couple of people joining us, Sedna, Lee Ellis as well in the chat, and amongst them we've got our wonderful Helix heroes, who are of course the fantastic people who support the channel that extra a little bit further by joining, as you can do down on YouTube below by clicking the link. And from as little as 99p you get access to some wonderful chats, emojis, specifically the Firefly emoji and the clicker emoji, which we do like dropping in there as well. I can see a couple of other people are joining us live. Jin as well, thank you very much for stopping in. And again, thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone. This show's doing really, really well. It's a chance for me and Richie to stretch out there, explore the American West and get into it. But Richie, let's get in the show. A little bit of a shorter show this week, but that doesn't mean we can't break it down in every granular detail for you, the viewing audience. First impressions for this show, this week's episode. What are your thoughts?
I think it's the weakest episode we've had so far, to be honest.
Why so?
There was... I don't know, I think, especially coming off the back of episode 3, which was, like, just absolute top-tier television. This did almost fell back to form, but then there's the stuff with, like, Kathleen and the Hunters just... It didn't quite land for me yet, but I am also distinctly aware that we're still kind of halfway through this particular block of story, where every other episode's almost had quite a self-contained field almost.
Yeah.
Like, this episode, well, we're definitely halfway through what's happening in, not Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's not Pittsburgh. They've rotated. God, my brain. You can almost see where it wants to say words, but it's not. It says entitled instead of titled. It says rotated instead of either way.
It's still a good episode. It's just, for me, the weakest one yet.
I think the general consensus is that just purely because we've had such stellar episodes so far. Like, we opened with an absolute blockbuster introduction, then we had the follow-up where obviously we lost more characters, and then we had last week's explosive episode with Bill and Frank. But I do actually think upon second watch there's certain characters that we'll get into where I'm starting to see maybe the bigger picture of things and the story that's starting to be told. But I very much do feel, I mentioned it right at the beginning, this isn't just a solitary episode. I think that's where the cadence has changed a little bit for us, because we've seen characters pretty much die every single week, right? We've literally, we had Sarah, who we gave for our best performance week 1, we had Tess week 2, and then we had Bill and Frank last week. And every week we've had that major beat, and I think because this was not only a shorter episode in the runtime of only 50 minutes this week, I actually think that in our own minds, because of the cadence, it's kind of, we were expecting something maybe bigger to happen near the end of the episode, and it didn't, which makes you feel a little bit like, is nothing happening?
Admit, I was expecting this to be a bit more action heavy than it was.
Because of last week's slow burn.
After last week, very much such emotional storytelling, I thought that we were just going to go, right, this episode, it's just going to be like just 45 minutes of almost relentless action.
Yeah, we did see some action, of course, which we'll get into in the breakdown. But yeah, I can completely agree. And I do think, because we're coming up on the halfway point of the series with episode 5 next week, this for me did feel like, I don't want to call it a filler episode, because it definitely wasn't filler. We saw a lot of stuff happen. But I think in terms of contextually setting up maybe a bit more of the world, we saw a lot of that in terms of a different quarantine zone, in terms of some new characters introduced, because we always needed new characters, because we couldn't just hang out with Joel and Ellie for prolonged periods of time, because there's only so much they want to showcase. They want to drip feed that relationship so it grows naturally rather than just skip ahead.
Actually, that we've got any like extended period of time of just Joel and Ellie so far. I'm in episode 4.
Absolutely.
Because episode 1 and 2 was very much Joel, Ellie, and Tess. Well, episode 1 was Ellie was barely in it. Episode 2 was Joel, Ellie, and Tess. Episode 3 was all Bill and Frank. So this is the first time we've actually really seen some actual development of Joel and Ellie's relationship, realistically.
Yeah, I completely agree.
If the end of last episode was kind of the starting point for when Joel kind of accepts that duty of care over Ellie, this is, over the course of this episode, their relationship is kind of redefined a bit. Again.
Yeah, I think Joel's character, Pedro Pascal, I think he actually had more conversational pieces of dialogue in this week. Every episode prior, every prior episode, he's very much had like a one-line answer, or he shut the conversation down, and that's again a testament to his character growth, and we're going to no doubt see that as their relationship evolves. But yeah, it was very much this week we saw him try and close down some conversations, and Ellie, by nature of them just being on their own for a long journey, kept chipping away at him and saying, "Tell me more, explain that to me." And she's always been inquisitive.
He's breaking his rules.
Yeah, but he's always kind of like just closed himself off to that. So it's interesting how that dynamic is shifting as well. And of course, we saw new characters, we saw new locations. Of course, if you haven't checked out the official Last of Us podcast hosted by Troy Baker and features the director and writers, worthwhile definitely doing. You get some really good insightful nuggets, which we do like to sprinkle in with this show, because it is so beneficial to the backstory of the way the script was written and the adaptation was made. in terms of this week, they went really in depth in some of the character thought processes and maybe stuff that you won't see on screen, but what them as the creators wanted to kind of imply and instill into the narrative. And I think it does really, really add a lot of information that we don't see otherwise on camera. Lee in the chat points out as well, yeah, we didn't see a single infected in this week's episode. So we might have heard of them, we might have seen something in which very, very divergent from the game, which we'll get into later in the breakdown. But yeah, interesting. So overall, Richie, I very much believe I'm with you, and it seems to be the live chat again here. Don and Jane, the rest of the crew, are kind of on the same pages as well. I think this was probably the weaker of the 4 episodes.
It's a setup episode. I think next week's going to be, or this week is going to be the payoff.
Yeah, Sunday, of course, when we go live, but Saturday if you're in the UK, and Friday if you're in the US. I don't think we've had official confirmation from other countries, so apologies out there if you're living in France. But yes, let's get into the breakdown, Richie, then, because we've got a lot to go into with this particular week's episode. I was almost going to do the news intro then, something like that, because we just kind of go straight into the breakdown. We don't have a segment.
It's a special Stadia story segment.
Yeah, we need to maybe think of one for that. 4 episodes in. But yeah, we usually have a rigmarole on every one of our other podcasts that go into it. So Lee, in the chat says, I thought it was out Monday for the UK. It was confirmed. I saw it on Twitter at some point earlier on today, which is why
it has been confirmed.
Yeah, it was actually a PlayStation website doing their due diligence on a PlayStation IP, putting it out there. Yeah, so it has been confirmed over here. So it'll be 2 a.m. Saturday morning in the UK. So for the most of us, we'll just watch it Saturday when we wake up. The actual feeling fresh. Right then, Richie, let's get into it. Let's go into the breakdown. So we do it open again, we get the HBO noise, static, and then we go straight into the Last of Us theme, that fantastic introduction. Is it safe to say we're maybe away from the cold open flashbacks now? 2 episodes in a row, we've not had them?
Possibly. I wouldn't be surprised if they come back if they needed to. I could almost see bits of the Left Behind DLC being just like a cold open flashback.
That is a good point. Yeah, I could see that
as a way of like slicing it into an episode without actually. It does feel like that could be like a pre-roll kind of thing.
Yeah, I could say that makes sense, because of course they've used the cold opening so far to show us not pre-outbreak day, but also to give us that kind of feeling of time variation, and having that The Last of Us in like digital introduction. It's a good like kind of short mini break to kind of reset the tone for when we eventually cut back to current events. So that could be a good shout. But yeah, that's 2 weeks in a row we've not had it. We go straight into the actual show, and we open with, of course, Ellie pointing the gun at the mirror, pretending to fire it. Pew 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 pew. We've all done it as kids with either our finger guns or little toy guns or whatever. You feel like a badass. You're checking what will I look like holding the gun, holding someone up, exactly. And she's
infatuated.
She's obsessed. She's clearly like got what she's want. I mean, she has been pestering Joel for probably days, weeks at this point. Miles and miles traverse, and every time she sees one. I mean, last week there's a whole damn wall of guns, as she pointed out, and she still wasn't allowed one. But she did find one in Frank's drawer, so she does have a pistol. Joel doesn't know about it yet, so that again will play into why she's. I think she's in a men's bathroom, checking it out in the mirror, which I'm sure Joel just kind of lets her go do her stuff.
Sniff.
But yeah, she sniffs it. That is weird. Which again, I think when we've been describing her character for the last 3 weeks, we always hone in on. She's clearly got some fascination with violence, and clearly that by proxy is weapons, killing machines in the form of guns, and she has a trusty knife, remember? We haven't seen much of it since the first episode, but she's kind of got this, as you said, infatuation with the gun and the thing, and sniffing it, kind of weird.
There's this thing where it's like, because of the survival nature of what they're going through, it's almost like she like idolizes those who can use this kind of like epic levels of violence to survive, like likes of Joel. Like that's why she seems to be warming up to Joel, because she sees like that he is like he'll do whatever it takes to survive, and that's kind of the nature of what they kind of need.
Yeah, and Joel,
it's almost like idolizing that people who are able to do that without fully maybe getting the consequence just yet.
Yeah, and I think that goes a long way to thinking just about the general nature of survival and growing up in a quarantine zone and being familiar with weapons, but then seeing someone who knows how to use them. We've seen in previous weeks she's inquired a lot about. She doesn't really ask casual, oh, look at the weather, look at those trees. It is usually like, you've been shot at. Did you shoot them back? Did you kill them? Did you hit them? Did you miss? It's a lot of our inquiries are actually around violence and have you killed someone before? Have you done that before? Even later in this episode, she asks Joel, like, have you done this before? Have you done stuff to innocent people? So she's probing at, like, not only personal, but she's probing at questioning lines that befit violence, and she's clearly got some intrigue about that nature of things.
Absolutely, but we have to remember she is still a 14-year-old girl. She's probably like when she's being with Fedra at the Fedra military school, fantasizing what it would be like to actually go out and fight infected.
Yeah,
like bear in mind she grew up in this world. She grew up in the world after the outbreak, so like the infected is this kind of constant thing for her. So you could see how she might just be growing up, like, and go not fully get the level of danger there, and just go, I actually want to be this like kind of superhero person running around with a gun shooting infect clickers in the face.
Yeah,
and then she sees Joel as someone who's literally done it.
Yeah, and if we take it to just even like real world today, like we haven't grown up in a world ravaged by an apocalypse, and yet when I was a kid, I had toy guns. I wanted a toy bow and arrow. We used to fight with swords all the time. And again, it's like, are humans just inherently violent? Most likely. But in terms of like you said, like obsessing over them, look at the game, the video game. Joel, and by proxy other pretty much almost every video game has some form of violence in it, and we love it. We're here to lap it up. Like Joel in the game must kill a good 100, 200 plus people throughout an entire playthrough. Yeah. Obviously, he's not going to do that in the show because that would make it look crazy, seeing him just murk people left, right, and centre.
Well, that's something that said right from the off, like they don't want to make the characters like superheroes. He's a 56-year-old man
with bad knees and bad hearing as well, which we learn in this episode. But yeah, we push on a little bit. We see Joel siphoning gas, which I think was a really good nod to the game. So even though Bill and Frank's storyline was very, very different on last week's episode, we do get that regular nod to elements of it. And I still think there's parts from that part of the video game which will show up at later points in the show. But yeah, the siphon the gas, if nobody knows from the video games, is just as they're about to leave Bill's town, he gives them a siphon hose and says, like, you'll be surprised how many cars have gas in them still. And one of the interesting thing was, I thought was really interesting, is what you wouldn't consider in a post-apocalyptic world, Richie, is that the fuel degraded over time. Like the oil in the petrol or gas, I guess, naturally separated, and it's a lesser inferior. You know when you go to the tank and you get your premium fuel, which you refuse to pay for as an everyday person struggling to pay by, you always go for the normal unleaded, right? Very few people get the premium unleaded, that kind of thing. But I would never even consider, like 20 years later, the gas in those tanks might just be shitty quality, so they have to get it more regular because it's burning in the engine differently.
Well, the cars have been probably sat there for over a decade and like rusted and stuff, and like corrosion's got into it, all sorts. Once there's a hole in the tank, there's all sorts of crap just gets in. It's just not good fuel anymore. Like, it might have been when it went in, but it's not anymore. Yeah,
these cars haven't seen an MOT in over 20 decades, and I know some people out there like to hold off on their MOT, but imagine waiting this long.
20 decades?
20 years, 2 decades. So that was interesting. I loved the part where Ellie again shows curiosity and says, how does it work? And he goes, oh, it's a siphon, gravity, and he kind of just gets lost in his own world. She's like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, dude. And he's like, yeah, I kind of don't, but that again,
I know it works.
Yeah, shut up, kid. I know it works, and it's again, it's going to lend. We'll see a lot of it in this episode, that their dynamic is shifting. He's willing to be a bit more playful with it. She's willing to call him out on his shit, which she does anyway, but it doesn't seem it's not as sharp, and she's not as kind of direct with it. It is a playful call out of it, which I think is them warming up to each other a little bit, which we're going to see. Ellie then, Richie, gets that pun book out, which I'm so glad it made it into the show. The director and Neil Druckmann talk about it in the official podcast, and basically saying you can miss this in the video game. Like if you could play through the whole game and miss the joke book, because she only gets it out in certain areas of the game when you've cleared an area, you've killed all the enemies, and you're kind of just loitering around exploring, and Ellie will just get a joke book out and just start throwing puns at Joel left, right, and centre. And some of them are quality, some of them are dad jokes, some of them are bad. But I'm so glad that they brought it into the show
in a brilliant way.
I mean, that's puns by nature, right? And I just love how they brought it in, because it shows that Ellie's still a kid. Like,
yeah.
And this is the one thing, shout out to like Craig Mazin, the director, he put a terrific line there. He said, Ellie's at that age where he described it with all kids, like even in the real world now, today, he described it as fuck off, tuck me in, or something. And the description was kids who are that age where they're so independent, they so fiercely want their own kind of life and make their decisions, but they still want looking after. So fuck off, but tuck me in at the same time, because they still want to be looked after by the parents. They still want that leadership, that direction. And Ellie's kind of got that from Joel. She's looking up to him, but at the same time, she's still a kid. She laughs at jokes books. She's got a freaking gun, but at the same time, she's just been so like daft and funny and whimsical with a joke book and giving Joel shit about not knowing what he's talking about. And we'll see that throughout the episode. But yeah, I'm so glad the joke book made it in the game. The exact same one as well. The exact same one.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Where do we move on to then? We get into the car journey kind of picks up, and Ellie finds that Hank Williams cassette in the back, which this is where we get some direct lines lifted from the video game. The cassette, so I was going to say CD there, the cassette was before his time, still a good one though, put it in. Now, interesting enough, my first thought was this is the song from the game, but it's not. It's the same artist, it's still Hank Williams, but it's a different song. And the reason that it really confused me is it was the song they used in the E3 trailer. So it is from the scene in the car as they're driving through Pittsburgh, but it's from the trailer of this clip from the game. So both songs are featured over this element of the game, but one's in-game and one's in the trailer. So Hank Williams, two different songs, but again, they sound very, very similar. And that was, for me, that was just like utter video game bliss of, we're like almost one for one doing this scene right now, and they committed to it. Because their conversation kind of stays the same. We get a good little throwback to the car being Bill and Frank's. Some of the comedy, and they were never going to leave this scene out, right? They were never going to leave this scene out. Yeah. Ellie finds porn magazine. It's filled with loads of gay porn, which I'm sure Bill and Frank used in their private time, shall we say. Or maybe just Bill before he even met Frank. And she holds it up and she's like, I want to see what all the fuss is about. And Joel's like, this is like any parent's worst nightmare. Your kids actively talking or looking at, I'm sure, porn, and you trying to address it in a responsible adult manner without either laughing or being too shy or just not knowing what to say.
A genuine curiosity from Ellie here, because we know she's a lesbian, but
not in the show.
Porn mag is like,
not in the show.
Not in the show, but it's they're not gonna. I doubt they're gonna rewrite that part of her character.
Oh, absolutely not.
So it's like, how do you even walk around with that thing?
Yeah,
like,
how the hell do you walk? Yeah, that is, yeah. And she's totally just winding Joel up. She knows what she's doing. Like, again, this is a very smart young girl.
Pages stuck together.
That's just horrible, isn't it, to even think about? But yeah, hits him on the back, just fucking with you, dude. And then because again, I watch this with my wife every week, and as soon as she put the car window down, I said out loud, "Bye-bye, dude." And then she used the line straight away. You see the magazine float past on the side of the road. And interesting enough, in the game, that's when you drive past the Pittsburgh sign. So it kind of promotes where they're heading to. Don't get that in the show, and that's Richie, because we ain't in Kansas anymore. In fact, no, we are in Kansas. We're not in Pittsburgh. So the director said they changed location because the location didn't really matter. And weirdly enough, the reason they switched location was purely just because where they shot in Alberta, Canada, I think it was, the streets and the towns they were shooting in just looked a little bit more like Kansas than they did Pittsburgh.
It was difficult for them to make it look like Pittsburgh, and they realised basically it being in Pittsburgh, which actually just wasn't important.
Yeah, just another stop.
And then this way, actually, all it does is it just moves them further along the journey a bit, but without actually impacting anything at all.
Absolutely.
So sorry if you're from Pittsburgh and you were looking forward to this. Being set in your city.
Oh, we get to see it. We get to see it in all its glory. It's like, no, we didn't. Car journey continues. They go for a drive. They have a couple of bits of conversation. Joel talks a little bit more, but essentially he decides that we've had a day. We need to pull over. We need to do some camping. And this is, again, just nitpicky things. Like, have you noticed when he pulls off the road to hide somewhere, you're literally leaving a trail of tyre marks right through a field directly to where you are. Not that they're going to be found that way, but it just made me chuckle.
It's better than nothing. Bear in mind, their car is pretty pristine compared to a lot of the others on the road, so they couldn't do the whole I pretended in the back of the car thing. So that would stand out a mile away. It would a little bit, absolutely. They pull off the road. They get into some woods, so they go in there. They start eating some Chef Boyardee
ravioli, which we don't have that in the UK. I don't believe. Like, I've heard of it mentioned a few times on some shows, but it's definitely a brand.
We have ravioli, but not that brand.
Yeah, we have actual ravioli. Yeah, we're not that detached from the real world. It's by the way, this girl needs to like slow down and chew. They are in an apocalyptic, for her standards, but like surely she's grew up in a QZ zone where food must surely still be limited. We know rations in the QZ zone exist. That's
why I wonder. It's like if there's something with the federal schooling, or like where it's just like you get what you get, and if you don't eat it, someone else will just take it off you. So it's just get it down you as soon as you can, sort of thing.
Yeah, like everyone fights for it.
Yeah,
maybe. But it was interesting. Like she wolfed it down so fast. It was just wow. Like breathe. She just inhaled it in. It was
clearly a definite choice, which I think it may come back later.
It did make me kind of want ravioli though. I'll be honest. I very rarely have ravioli, but did make me think, might order that next time I'm out at an Italian restaurant. Throughout that conversation, they talk about just settling down for the night, starting a fire, and Joel again tries to start educating Ellie a little bit on the wider world outside of a QZ zone. Remember, every week we've seen her kind of learn something new about the infected, or what's going on in the world, or just people in general, and Joel points out, like, it's not infected we've got to worry about out here all the time. And of course they're not even in the episode, so we clearly have to watch out for other people starting a fire. Makes sense.
It's the infected aren't smart enough to understand what smoke is and go towards it, and also because in the middle of nowhere there's going to be no infected around.
That fungal network
infected
hasn't quite stretched out to the woods just yet. They settle down for the night, and we get at the point where I absolutely laughed at this bit as well, when Ellie says, like, Joel, I've got can I ask you a serious question? I'm like, oh, what's she going to ask? And she tells another joke. But even better, Joel knows the punchline for the joke, because he was a dad and he would know loads of shitty bad dad jokes. So I actually feel like if they left me with this one, I feel like I've heard this joke plenty of times before. So that punchline would have got to me. But it was nice to see him, and they kind of had that little sweet bonding moment where, even though like she's clearly scared about people now, Joel's on edge because he's probably not slept for however many hours and he's been driving all day, and he just has like that kind of like little look on his face where it's like, that was funny, but time for sleep now. And of course Ellie's a bit nervous about the whole thing.
That kind of look on his face where he finds it quite funny, but he's not willing to show that he found it funny yet.
He's not willing to break that cold, like, fatherly figure yet. But Joel reassures her, and then of course he's almost like scares himself in a way, because then he ends up staying up for chunks of the night as well with his rifle on duty in the middle of the forest, which, geez, he must be tired at this point, driving all day and then staying up on night watch as well. Obviously they don't take shifts.
During this kind of scene where he's laying down, I noticed that every time he lays down he's always facing away from Ellie, and we kind of actually learn about why later in the episode. But I thought this was one of them things where he's trying to be a bit colder than he actually is, so he doesn't get attached a bit.
Well, she's just cargo, because they get back in the car. But wake up the next morning, coffee's on the boil, and Ellie does not like the smell of coffee. She crawls over it to a little Metapod beanbag, sleeping bag, not a beanbag, and she just basically says, it smells like shit. I don't like coffee, so I'm kind of in Ellie's camp with this one. Richie, you do enjoy a good coffee.
Yes, I do.
Joel says, obviously what Frank had in storage wasn't that great, but you got to imagine in this kind of world like that. Like, Joel loves coffee. We know that from the games.
Yeah, in the games, he's one of the things. Anytime you come across a coffee machine, he's kind of like, oh, I miss coffee.
Damn coffee.
And you can imagine it'd be the same for Joel in this world. But so if he gets his hands on coffee, it's like, oh yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we say that like it's a unique thing. Millions of people love coffee all around the world. It's not like a trait unique to this man in the Midwest. But I do think it's funny. And Ellie references Starbucks, get a sponsored shout out. Is this what the Starbucks at the QZ used to sell? Smells like burnt shit. And it's like, don't tell her how overpriced it was either. Imagine saying it would cost you 10 rations to get a Starbucks back in the day. Either way, they go on in the car. Joel's a bit playful with it.
Joel, he takes a big noisy slurp after like...
He's winding her up. He's absolutely winding her up. And again, he's buying into that, just like that playful fatherly banter I would imagine you'd have with a child, where if they don't like something, you rub it in their face and you go, "Ooh, look, it's going to get you." So it's that kind of like funny behaviour that's starting to pop up. They keep going. Ellie shows more inquisitive nature, asking questions about Tommy. What's his name? What did he do? And this is where we kind of see Joel actually open up. He says, "Oh, it's a long story." And I think she looks at the map and goes like, "Dude, we've got a 25-hour journey. Is it that long of a story?" So she calls him out on him trying to close the conversation down, which is where he genuinely is like, I've got another option, but I guess to talk to you on this car journey. And it's nice because, we see him talk about his brother for a little bit. We get a bit more insight into Tommy's history. So he's got a military background, which I'm sure is going to come in later on when it comes to defending things or attacking things. And it was just interesting to see because we don't get that much of Tommy's backstory in the game. So again, the show's really taken on itself to flesh out their relationship. Even though we haven't seen Tommy since episode 1, it's interesting to see Joel basically sees himself as very much the big brother. He's got himself into trouble. I have to go after him. As we saw in episode 1, remember Tommy was in prison and Joel had to go bail him out, and that's why he wasn't there with Sarah at the very beginning on Outbreak Day. It seems like this has been a trend throughout their life together, and at the end of the day, he is the older brother.
Tommy's described as a trainer, so he fancies himself a bit of a hero. He joins causes. That's why he joined the army, because he wanted to be involved in Desert Storm. And it's always Joel seems to be always the one who's trying to get him out of it. That seems to be like the core of their relationship. Absolutely.
Shout out to another video game while we're here, Conflict Desert Storm. Brilliant video game. Fantastic co-op as well. I think PS2, I'm going to say. But yeah, and then this is where they have that conversation, which we all saw in the trailers back in the day, where it's he talks about family and he refers to Ellie as cargo again, and he says like, "Look, I'm doing this for Tess because she was like family to me. It was a promise. You are cargo." And I think after that kind of exchange and how close they've maybe been becoming over the last few days and the few nights together in the campsite and in the long car journeys, I think that's Joel again just reminding himself, you are still cargo. I cannot get attached to this young girl. I do not want to open up that wound of having a daughter and being a father again. He's fighting it so much. We also
it's been
can't
a kind
help
of
it.
a theme of Joel's where he just seems to be a natural dad throughout the show, but he keeps trying to close himself off from that.
Yeah,
like, I'm not that anymore. It's like, and Ellie's really breaking him down. It's like,
yeah, and if you've, I mean, again, no one wants to experience what he did with Sarah, but you can imagine, like, he spent 20 years clearly doing bad things and surviving, as he says, but you just
not
any
only
chance
the guilt of that situation. You've then got 20 years of being a horrible fucker, basically, on top of it.
Builds on top of you. And again, we keep going back to it, but remember, he's just lost Bill and Frank. He's just lost Tess. Yeah. All within the space of a week. He's not got his comfort. His brothers, we don't know where his brother's at yet. He's been tasked with this girl, and his world has literally been flipped upside down. So it's crazy, but it's interesting to see how he keeps that distance still. The car journey continues. We arrive at Kansas City. We see that
it's quite a funny match cut, and again, it's just one of these little playful things between Joel and Ellie. He's like, "You got up really early, like you must be tired." And she's like, "I'm not tired." Then it just match cuts to like out.
Yeah, she is flat out cold. Yeah, that is a good one, and that's in the game as well. So it's again straight 1-for-1 comedy beat there. They get there, been driving for again many more hours. So Joel is certainly putting in the miles. I would hate, Richie, to think how often they would have to actually stop for petrol. Like on a long journey, I get fearful of finding my next petrol station in my car. Imagine doing it when there's no guarantee. You must be stopping to siphon fuel out of like every damn vehicle you find.
Car, you fill every single container from every single car you could find.
Absolutely.
You just wouldn't take any chances.
Not at all. And then again, there's no guarantee. You could find 10 cars and they could all be empty themselves. So yeah, it must be so like that risk fear that you have. They come across Kansas City though. They come across the roadblock, which again we know happens in the video game, and as they're basically being funneled down a different pathway, a different route, we know what's happening. We know what's coming almost, and the music beats start to pick up, and you can almost hear the music getting more sinister as they're getting funneled in more, almost like claustrophobia. You get it where the buildings are starting to encroach on them, the lighting over the cars getting darker. The tones of the music are picking up. Joel's starting to seem a bit stressed on his face as they're getting more to the city centre. Ellie's saying, "It's my second fucking day in a car, man." She's like getting annoyed and stuff, and you could almost feel the tension from all angles building to the point we know what's happening next, and that is Ellie shouts across. She notices the quarantine zone. Doors are wide open. This is not a locked, safe quarantine zone anymore. And this, Richie, is kind of when we realise, in the famous words of Admiral Akbar, it's a trap.
It's a trap.
The guy shows up, of course. Oh, help me. And
straight from the game.
Although Joel didn't say the line, which I was hoping, where he's like, he's not even hurt. And then he just goes, I think she says, we're going to help him. He just goes, no. And then,
seatbelt on.
No, seatbelt on now. Plows the car forward. There's I think a brick comes down from the ceiling. There's gunshots at them. They go over a spike strip and then inevitably crash into the side of a store, which is... It all happens almost... The only thing they didn't use, Richie, is the bus. In the video game, they use a bus very effectively down with a ramp to basically ram you off the road. And after playing the game so many times, the reason they use that bus is because it blocks off the exit path for that whole area of the video game. So if you try and get back out and escape that area, which should just be a big open road, the bus basically just blocks you into a gunfight with about 8 of them.
Clever way in a game to like close an area off.
It is really creative. But yeah, so we get to that point. There isn't quite the same amount of people who attack you in the video game, but we do have that panic moment of Joel's like quickly again, parental, are you okay? Are you hurt? No. Get out the car. They kind of shuffle down and a shootout ensues, and Joel immediately is straight on thinking about saving Ellie, and he's like, just crawl, run, get through that hole, you won't be shot, don't worry. And again, really does a good job, I think, reinforcing like what the plan is. So he's clearly been in shootouts before, and he's not as maybe phased or panicked as a normal person would be. He knows what to do. He knows how to instruct. He knows he's got his rifle out. He's loading that, ready to go. He doesn't seem as phased, even though he's just been through a horrific car accident. Immediately has to protect a young girl and shoot back and defend himself all at the same time. Of course, in the video game, we'd be wrapping bandages, throwing bricks, throwing bottles, pistol, using all of our ammo. Doesn't have that option in real life, or in the game's version of real life, I take it.
See, this is an opportunity where I think they could have brought a brick into play. Because he shoots one behind the car, and he kind of sneaks around to shoot another.
Yeah.
It's like, that's where I wanted to see him throw a brick or bottle to distract it and like maybe like stab him from behind or something.
It must be so hard as the creators of the show to not bring as much in, because one of the things I was hoping to see in this moment was when they crash the car in the video game, before he has a chance to explain to Ellie, like, is everything okay, you hurt? Someone actually grabs him straight out of the driver's side door and smashes his head through a shop. It's almost like a fridge, right? He smashes his head through the glass, and Joel comes within inches of having his neck severed by a shard of glass sticking out from the fridge door, and he fights the guy off and absolutely guts the guy on the shard of glass. And I don't know whether that's maybe... I was going to say too violent for the show, but HBO did Game of Thrones, and that did not hold back on the violence.
I think it's probably just, again, going into that. Joel's a bit more grounded. He's not this, like, I can take on an army on my own kind of guy. But yeah, I think as well, going back to the brick things, like, if you think about it, if you're in a gunfight with someone and suddenly a brick got chucked apart over somewhere, would you look to where the brick lands or look to where the brick would have came from?
Well, as a human, I understand trajectory and momentum and everything, so I know what's happening there. So maybe
in the game, you throw a brick, the enemy walks and goes, oh, there's a brick here, that wasn't there. And then, like, in real life, that wouldn't happen. So I wonder if that's why maybe staying away from that mechanic.
Yeah, common sensibilities. I do think we'll see it with a clicker at some point.
More of a stealth moment or clicker,
we might see it. But yes, either way, Ellie crawls through a little hole. Joel returns from fire. He takes one of them out. Does he take one of them out or two of them out? It doesn't matter. He kills.
He takes one out from range, then he sneaks behind and shoots another one as he comes into the store. Yeah,
and then he thinks he's done, but unfortunately he's not, because he's not got good hearing. Guy sneaks up on him. They have a little tussle on the floor. Ellie's, of course, hidden in a little hidey hole now, just kind of trying not to be too overwhelmed by it all. And he is kind of like, it's not going well for Joel. He's struggling. He's on the floor. He's essentially being choked out by this guy. He's been beaten practically. Ellie climbs back through a hole. She's got the gun out of her bag, bang. She just shoots the guy attacking Joel in the back.
Looks horrified when she does it, actually. Like,
Ellie does.
Look on her face is like, whoa. Like,
I think it was that
Ellie, yeah.
She's going to have to. So she's fantasized about it in the mirror right at the beginning of the episode, but then the reality is, like, how many people would say they do it, but then when the time came, it might be like, oh shit, I'm about to shoot another human being, which we don't know her history yet with injuring or shooting people, so we won't dwell on that much. But yeah, so she shoots the guy in the back. Joel obviously gets free, trying to get his breath back, and this guy who seemingly is a hunter killer who's obviously tried to catch them in this ambush, absolutely turns on a dime, Richie. This guy starts pleading his heart out. He's shouting for his mother. He tries to humanize himself by explaining that his name is Brian. He's like, I'm Brian. Like, we're friends now. We won't. I don't want to hurt you. We can trade. Yeah. And he does the ultimate pivot of like, I am no longer in charge of this scenario, and I'm literally begging for my life. Is what he's doing.
I've just tried to kill this guy. Now being shot in the back, like, if I don't convince these people to let me go, I'm done. Yeah,
and I thought it was a really interesting character trait that Ellie didn't get drawn into it. I feel like when he said, I'm Brian, as a naive young child, you might be encouraged to say, my name's Ellie, and then you've got that, you know, when
it's the dichotomy of Ellie, where she has that kind of like potency for violence, but then she's also a 14-year-old girl. Like, she goes back to immediately after she pulls the trigger, she falls back into the 14-year-old girl, staring at this person she's just shot. He's begging for life. That must be traumatizing.
Yeah, and Joel's
It'd almost be easier if the guy died in one shot.
Yeah.
The fact that he survived and he's in tears and he's begging for his life. That must almost be harder.
And this is what the show director, it's whenever I reference these, it's Craig Mazin, the director, and Neil Druckmann talking about it. Is they want, like, again, the video game does so well, especially in part 2 of the video game, kind of humanizing the villains. They're not just NPCs, they're not just murderers, they're killers. They all have their own reasons and backstory. And as soon as he says, like, I'm Brian, it's almost, you know, when people bring dogs home, stray dogs, and they say, don't name it, don't give it a name, because you'll get attached to it. It's almost the same thing of, as soon as they say, my name's Brian, like, and he starts calling out for his mom, you're suddenly thinking, this guy's got, obviously he's a real person, he's got a name, he's not just NPC murderer number 3. He has he's crying out for his mum, which and he's a young lad. He's not like a hardened rough guy. Like, he's not in his 50s like Joel, who's seen seen shit.
Early 20s, maybe.
So just a few years older than Ellie, and yes, he's clearly doing some bad shit, but
he might not. He's probably never killed anyone. Like, that,
he might not have
done. Joel's
yeah.
probably the first person he tried to kill.
So we get that thing where we're obviously on Joel and Ellie's side in this, but we don't know his backstory. And we kind of get a little bit of a glimpse into that when we get to the wider group in a short time. But Joel tells Ellie, get back in the hall. And as she's behind there...
Takes the gun off her.
Yeah, takes the gun off her. And we hear the kind of Brian basically, like, he knows his moments are numbered. And no gunshot. Joel seemingly stabs him through the chest. We don't know if he used Brian's knife, because he did try and just fob his knife off as like a piece of gift.
Knife. It's a good knife.
He's like, I don't care. And Joel knows what he needs to do.
I think it's implied that, if it is a good knife, Joel's just got this knife. I think it is implied that Joel uses Brian's knife, but I don't think it's relevant unless this is like Brian's knife will come back into it or something. But Joel not having a knife on him would be weird. It wouldn't make that much sense.
Yeah. It's
he has just lost his backpack.
He has, he doesn't have a backpack. He's also left loads of stuff in Frank's car, which is mentioned in a short while. But interesting again, use the knife, so saving bullets. Because again, like, why would you use another bullet and draw more attention to obviously the big car crash through the shop window, and then obviously they sneak off. Which is kind of crazy that Joel's put an end to it, but it makes sense, right? Because if he didn't kill him, that means if someone find him and he might be injured, but Brian could have just went
that way.
They went that way. It's a young girl with a middle-aged man. He's got a beard. He's wearing a green jacket. She's got a red t-shirt on, and then it's not worth the risk in these scenarios. You've just been ambushed.
I just see Joel and Ellie sneak out the back. you actually hear someone shout, "They've killed Brian."
Not Brian, no. We've got body over here. It's like, oh dear.
It's a very video gamey thing, like you do here in like the games, like the shout out when they find the corpses of the comrades.
Yeah, and again, it humanised them. It's not just NPCs; it's actual people. As much as Louise says, he's taken NPC's backstory, and never taken it seriously since Austin Powers. Absolutely, yeah. It's Will Ferrell, isn't it, in the Austin Powers bit, the random guy who's been sent to kill him. But yeah, we then pivot away from Joel and Ellie for a little bit as they go into hiding, and we meet some new characters to the video game. We meet Kathleen. In an interrogation prison, or an old interrogation prison, which is Fedra. Kathleen, played by Melanie Linsky, who I only know her from 2.5 Men, of all things. When I saw her face in the trailer, I thought, okay, making the jump from comedy to drama again.
I didn't click
Did you not click on that? Click it on that.
No, as soon as you said 2.5 Men, they're just like, oh my god, yeah.
It's Rose, yeah, from many episodes of 2.5 Men back in the day. Yeah, she makes an appearance interrogating this former doctor. We don't know anything about these characters. They're all new. They're not involved in the game at all. So, again, the great thing with this show and this adaptation is that we get to see different characters and elements moving away from Joel and Ellie. We don't spend the whole time with them. So, she's with a bunch of people who essentially overthrew Fedra in the quarantine zone, which that's what has me most intrigued, Richie, is that this group of people we meet now, I'm guessing the way they act and the way they behave, they overthrew this quarantine zone very recently. Like, I don't think this is like many years later. I think this is a recent thing, and this doctor clearly was a Fedra doctor who dealt with these people weeks, not even maybe months ago.
There's a weird thing with her leash. It still feels a bit shaky as her as a leader, which makes me think is like, was she in charge? Was she so pivotal for them overthrowing that she just by default took the leadership position? Where overthrowing an organization and then running a new one and not the same thing. So like
this group could be the equivalent of the Fireflies in Boston, but in this quarantine zone. And so she talks to the guy who she's threatening, the doctor, about her brother's death, and she talks about him being beaten to death. And I maybe feel like her brother was possibly the leader of this rebellion group. And as you said, naturally being his sister, she's then stepped into that role, and everyone looks at her as being his second in command potentially. But yeah, she doesn't kind of hold her own a little bit. I don't know. I don't think it's the acting, because initially, after the end of this episode, I thought she was one of the weakest characters. I didn't buy her. I didn't believe that she would be like this cold. I know she's not in this moment, but the cold-hearted killer she apparently is by the end of the episode. But when she's issuing like rules and instructions, she didn't give me the sense that she really had conviction for what she was doing.
Yeah, I got that as well. That's why I wonder if it's like she's not new to this. She is new to this. She's new to being in that leadership position. But when she's like overthrowing Fedra, probably the raw emotion, especially of what's happened to her brother seemingly just beaten to death in a Fedra cell. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's what kind of carried her. She was able to have. She's clearly capable of extreme violence. So maybe it's just like when she's talking to people, she doesn't have that natural kind of charisma you get from a leader. Yeah. Yet.
Well, the doctor kind of calls it out, doesn't he? He says it's gone too far. This needs to stop. And she says like, well, it's that now you're not safe. The rules have changed now. You're not the one dishing out the violence. And she puts a gun to his head and says, has she met the criteria for him to talk yet? So her interrogation is have I satisfied the necessary conditions for you to talk yet? While she puts the gun to his head, and the doctor's like, you're not going to kill me. There's a horn outside. She goes out and she's the remains of Bri, our good boy Bri, who died trying to kill Joel. We're also introduced to Perry, who I'm very intrigued to see more of. So Perry is played by Jeffrey Pierce, and he's the guy who voiced Tommy in the video game. So anyone out there with some keen, I mean, you don't even need keen ears. He literally sounds straight up like Tommy from the game. As soon as he started talking, I was like, yeah, that's Tommy. So Jeffrey Pierce playing a new character called Perry, who seemingly is... I was going to say Rose then. Kathleen's right-hand man. He seems to be the enforcer behind her leadership. And part of me thinks he might be the one who's really in charge. Just by the nature of, like, he holds his own, he's got his SWAT gear, he's clearly an ex-army vet of some kind. Like, was he a Fedra agent, or maybe during the rebellion, what just happened, he might have switched allegiances.
I think he seems too much of a soldier, almost, to be in charge. It seems like he's still quite happy to follow orders and not take that leadership yet.
Yeah.
That may change next episode.
Like, is he the puppeteer behind Kathleen? Or is for some reason...
I don't think he doesn't seem to be the kind for me to be a puppeteer. He's a soldier. He understands the situation. He's probably a good second in command. Mm-hmm. He's used to following the orders and used to that hierarchy. And she's in charge. He does as he says. But he's in a position where he's probably a bit more open at calling her out.
Yeah, I can see that. But it's interesting how these two characters, even by the end of the episode, there's something either with their dynamic or the group dynamic that I feel like I need to see more of to believe in it. And Neil and Craig said in the official podcast, they said that's how they wanted us to feel, which is, again, back to my overarching thoughts on this episode, is that I feel like this is a part 1 of 2. And what we'll see in next week's episode, or later on this week as it airs early, we'll really see that relationship solidify into why they are how they are. And when we see the bodies brought in and we see Brian is dead, obviously, and there's another, the person Joel shot is kind of on his way out, that's when she really, really turns and she says, this is the doing of Henry. This is Henry's fault. So she brings Henry into this, and then she makes that decision. Do you need a doctor? Would a doctor benefit us right now? No. She marches straight back to that cell, pops the guy in the head without a second thought. She's done.
It's quite interesting because Perry thinks it's just outsiders. She just immediately assumes that Henry's called for backup.
Which, again, getting into the kind of the characters,
nothing. She makes that assumption on nothing.
And this is where I'm kind of building a backstory in my own head of Quarantine Zone was there. Henry was part of their group. At some point, Henry, even though we've not met Henry yet, of course, those who played the video games know who Henry is. We've not met him in the show yet. I think they're going to cross over some stories. And in the video game, Henry and Sam, who we'll meet at the end of the episode, they are part of just a small group who just happen to pass by the city. And they get caught up in all of this kind of craziness that's going on. In the show, I feel like Henry was part of Kathleen's group. When the Fedra thing all popped off and they were trying to overtake the quarantine zone, he's betrayed them and maybe Kathleen's brother in some way, because, not through sheer violence, to protect Sam. He's had an option of Sam's going to die or be in serious danger if you don't tell us where Kathleen is or where Kathleen's brother is. And like any brother, he's protecting his back to that theme of family and love. He's going to throw all his friends under the bus to protect his brother, Sam. And I think, as much as Kathleen's clearly angry at Henry, she's blaming him for everything, I think his reasons will be justified because he's protecting his brother.
That is, I think you're right. His reasons are going to be, I did this to protect Sam. However, Kathleen's like,
at the cost of
you turning basically to becoming a Fedra informant effectively led to my brother being killed.
Yeah,
and as soon as Fedra got hold of my brother, there was no mercy.
Yeah,
because probably he's been leading this band of rebels to overthrow them. So Fedra are going to be, they're not good. I mean, Bill straight up calls them Nazis, and it's like they're going to use whatever violence they need to keep everyone back in line.
Yeah, and this goes back to, again, just the themes we talked about with Joel and Ellie. It was like, nobody's the bad guy. So from Kathleen's point of view, her brother got killed by the kind of the people overrunning the quarantine zone. So Henry's just trying to protect his brother Sam from whatever threat he was under, which I'm guessing we'll hear more of next week. Joel and Ellie killed the ambushers who attacked them, but as we know, Brian and the other ambushers, they were trying to defend the quarantine zone from potential Fedra trying to take it back. So they actually ambushed Joel and Ellie thinking they might have been Fedra trying to retake the quarantine zone. And I think Perry's character...
make an argument that Fedra, what they're doing is they're being very, very dogmatic, very like, get inside these walls, do as we say, to keep as many people alive as possible. There's be people in Fedra who believe this is the best way we can do this.
Yeah.
By like...
an iron fist
squashing out people's freedoms. Yeah, it is straight up like...
communist rules.
There seems to be, in any sort of organisation like that, there's going to be some horrible people who float to the surface. But there's probably a lot of, like, the Fedra soldier we met in episode 1.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like a bad guy.
Sympathetic. We're all in this together kind of thing. And we see that in the real world in police forces all the time. We hear it. The police are there to enforce good and the law. And yet, how many times do you open the news and there's a bad story about police officers? Because you're going to get a couple of bad eggs in it anyway. Yeah. But back to what we were saying about Perry, Jeffrey Pierce's character, when he talks about them, he thinks they're outsiders. He says they might be mercenaries hired by Fedra because when they looked at Joel and Ellie's car, he said it was filled up with gear and loot and weapons because they got all that from Frank and Bill.
Yeah.
But they don't know that. They just see a car coming back into the quarantine zone filled with weapons. They've lost three people on their team. So to them, Joel and Ellie could be anyone, maybe. And then this is where Kathleen defaults straight to, this is all Henry's fault. Henry. Whether it's Henry directly or Henry by proxy, she's putting all that anger directed towards Henry.
Yeah, he's looked at what's the situation when I think these are outsiders because they're clearly not from here. They've came in a car we've never seen before.
Yep.
It's relatively clean. They've got tons of gear. Are they here to probably resupply or back up? And Kathleen's like, that's Henry.
Yeah. And again, back to the quarantine zones. Like, we know the quarantine zones exist. They don't know when they've collapsed this quarantine zone and rebelled and took it over. What's to say a quarantine zone doesn't radio to the next quarantine zone and say, send reinforcements, and an army of 20, 30 people rocks up with tanks, weapons, bullets, armour, all the stuff they just fought to overthrow because they were oppressed or whatever. It makes for that really interesting dynamic where this world is fucked and everyone is just fighting for their own little groups of people and friends and family. And it doesn't go away. Everyone has their own backstory, which is really, really interesting. And I'm looking forward to see more of it.
Because Kathleen actually pretty much straight up tells their mob to just go on the rampage. Round up everyone who's on my list and just straight up kill them. Not even like bring them back for questioning, just execute.
Yeah. And this is where
then
she's
it's
on
very
the
much
deep
they're
end.
getting in Fedra. They've got Fedra equipment on. They're getting Fedra vehicles. They're using actual like tactics like battering rams and stuff to break down doors. They've basically just become Fedra again.
History repeats itself, right? That's
it's
what
like
we tend to
the
know.
way she's like, the way they're operating, the way she's like leading is basically exactly like Fedra was.
Yeah. Is this what her brother would have wanted, Richie? Is this what her brother died for? We'll find out on next week's show. We might. Perry takes Kathleen over to an attic space where we essentially see where Sam and Henry have been kind of hiding. He's found some evidence to suggest he knows where they are. We go up, we see loads of empty cans of food, we see drawings all over the wall. And again, for those who don't know, Sam is a child. He's a lot younger. I think he's a lot younger than Ellie, actually. Even in the game, I think they talk about each other's age, and I think he pretends to make himself a bit older for Ellie's sake. And I think Henry actually mocks him and says like, "You're not that old yet, kid." But we see kind of food, and we see cartoon drawings all over the place, kind of like the Superman kind of superhero stuff. Yeah, capes and flying around and different scribblings. Clearly, Sam sees himself as a bit of an artist. He's got drawings all over the inside of this attic. But yeah, interesting that they're not there. Before all that, though, we do see Joel and Ellie. We cut back to them, and they're kind of hiding away in a shop covered in newspaper, peeking out through the cracks, seeing what's going on. And this is where we get a really touching moment with our two characters of essentially they're both sat there in silence, kind of hiding from all the trucks going past. And I guess we start to see them both take stock of what the hell's just happened. This has been the first firefight they've been in. Ellie definitely. Joel maybe hasn't seen one for a long time, and they both got out of it alive.
But the difference is with Joel is he's never been through one with a 14-year-old girl stood behind him.
Absolutely. And
like
again,
everything that means. Yeah,
from like a parental standpoint, helping her, and I think he realised at that point when he's apologised, like he actually says sorry to her.
He does.
And it kind of breaks Ellie in a way where she's holding it all together surprisingly well. And he actually says, "I'm sorry, I should have heard the guy coming. You're too young. You shouldn't have had to do that." And she actually reveals that it's not a first kill.
Yeah, I think Joel has this thing where he sees it. He's probably seen Sarah in her. He's like, it's my job while she's under my care to protect her, not just physically, but also protect her innocence in almost a weird way. Like,
she doesn't get a gun.
It's why she's not allowed a gun. It's like, no, it's like, you stay out of any. There's going to be bad shit on the road. You stay out of it, because that's how I am protecting you more than just physically.
Yeah.
It just
emotionally as well. Like he's protecting her from everything. And again, that's probably why he doesn't want it. Like even we saw in episode 3, right, when they went past all the burnt pile of dead bodies, he wanted to go a different route just to stop her from having to see that, because you don't know what it does to a young mind. It's just like censorship in real life. Like The Last of Us an 18 rated game, Richie, or 15? There's a reason a 10-year-old can't go into the shops and buy The Last of Us for PlayStation, because there's certain elements of violence that we want to keep children away from. So yeah, we see that, and we get quite a touching moment where Joel kind of apologizes, and Ellie like lets out a few tears, and she's like, "Yeah, it's okay."
He's quite angry at himself, actually.
Oh, he's totally shouldering all the blame.
There's a few moments where you see that, and this is actually the second time we see Ellie almost cry as well in this episode.
Yeah, she kind of weeps.
The first time is when she's behind the door and she hears Brian get killed. She can see like a few tears on her face. She's trying to pretend she's not.
Yeah.
I think that's why when soon Joel comes through, she's very pack up, let's go.
Yeah.
Probably because she doesn't want Joel to look at her. Like she doesn't want to be seen vulnerable.
Yeah, and we get that moment where Joel kind of teaches her how to hold the gun properly, and he kind of accepts that she can hold her own, but she deserves a gun. And again, this is a big...
innocence is lost already, so now he's like, well, I can't protect her innocence.
So let's embrace.
She's already hurt someone before this. She's better off prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's the parent kind of knowing that they can only stay children for so long, I guess. And she's already 2 marks past that by killing 2 people, apparently. It's an interesting change in direction from the game, because of course in the video game it's the hotel sequence we actually saw back in episode 2 with Tess, and Joel ends up being in a fight, ends up being choked almost underwater in like a big puddle essentially, and Ellie picks up a gun and she kills the guy straight in the head, and she's like, holy shit, I just shot that guy. And they have the repercussions after, but Joel's a lot more closed off in the game. Like he's angry that she tried to, basically she saved his life, but he takes a lot longer to come to terms with he should thank her for saving him, and she did the right thing. But it comes to a different crescendo in the game, so this is kind of that moment echoed here, I felt, where he does show how to use the gun, how to hold it properly, and basically just accepts her that you are ready and I trust you. So again, just another one of them little parental beats to say, yes, I trust you. Like just like parents and their kids will mess up and do dumb shit, but as a parent you've got to at some point overcome it, and they've got to learn from the mistakes, right, and their doings.
He has a kind of another little playful moment with her, it's like where after he's shown how to hold the gun, it's like wobbles it in hand and tries to pull off it, and like she's both,
they laugh together, don't they?
Yeah,
it's nice. It's a good bit of emotional storytelling. So we know, Kathleen and all her people are out on the hunt. Joel says we'll go when the trucks pass by. They climb up, they go out, and then this is where they have to climb the stairs, Richie, to get kind of a vantage point, and also get away from everyone. They're running across the street, and this is where they have to climb. How many flights of stairs was it? Like 30, 50, something like that?
45 in total, but it's like as many as we can get her up, basically.
Yeah, so it gets climbing. So just like Ghostbusters, when they have to go right to the very top, they all just complain the whole way. I can't remember the last time I went up that many flights of stairs. I always just take a lift now in modern day society.
It's this moment, like, Joel manages 33 stairs. Let's think about what he's just done. He the night before he didn't sleep. He stayed up all night, like in the forest with a rifle, guarding Ellie, effectively. Drove all day, was ambushed in a car crash, killed a bunch of guys,
almost killed,
managed to escape, protected this young girl, so he's probably emotionally exhausted as well as physically, and then went, I've got to climb a bloody skyscraper.
Yeah, and he's done it all powered by coffee. That's how good that shit is, ladies and gentlemen.
He's had 1 cup of coffee.
Yeah, he did make a pot at least. He had a lot of coffee on there. Yeah. But yeah, man, what a day. So
he's had a bad one.
He also says I'm 56, so shut up. Yeah. Like, I have bad knees. That's why we don't see him crouching that much. Like in the video game, I spend the whole game pretty much squatted and getting in my squats for the day, and in reality you wouldn't be able to do that at all. So yeah, they climb the stairs, they have a bit of a conversation, and I think it's important on this part that Ellie asks him about what just happened. She breaks it down a bit more, and she says, like, how did you know it was a trap from the injured guy before the crash? And he tells you he's been on both sides, he's seen it, and she asks him if he's killed innocent people, and he kind of gives her that look of, do you really want me to answer that? Like, do you really want me to go there?
You know the answer.
Like, yeah. And
let's not go there.
he's been on both sides, which just isn't good at all. But again, this is where Ellie, I think, has that kind of what she sees in Joel as that mutual respect. Like, she knows he can look after her. Like, she can clearly see, like, she's with the right guy to see her through to the end. And
he's persistent.
Yeah, he says it about Tommy, doesn't he? And I think this is what's going to be like the make or break thing with their relationship later on in the series, which we know will eventually probably happen. It's building those foundations of, like, she trusts him so much, and she will trust him so much as they go further on their adventure. And at that point, Joel presumably is going to pass her off to Tommy or the Fireflies or whoever. How much impact are we going to feel at that point as an audience? Are we going to be like, you can't break them up? No, like, they're supposed to, like, hang out with each other, father and daughter, point two. And
I mean, if you know the story, they need to get to that point. Exactly.
So really, really interesting. He sprinkles some glass on the floor. They're settling down up there on the top of the high-rise building. They have a little interesting back and forth. Ellie calls him out saying he can't hear that well, so the glass trap might not work.
It's right here.
It's right here, yeah, very important.
Which is where I mentioned earlier, where he always seems to be facing away from Ellie. He's always laying with his right ear down. Yeah. Every time we've seen him so far lay down, it's his left ear up, his good ear.
He sleeps near the door. He says it's a glass trap where it makes noise. Ellie, again, trying to talk about things. He asks her about the person that she killed, and she says, interesting enough, the first time Ellie doesn't want to talk. And she says, I don't want to talk about it. And Joel just accepts that, rolls over. And then again we get a fantastic part where Ellie mentions a joke, and she says, off the top of my head, it's did you know diarrhea was hereditary? It runs in your genes, yeah, which is direct from the game. It is one of the jokes. I can't remember if it's in the Left Behind stuff with Riley or it's in just the main game part, but it's definitely from the game.
All the puns Ellie says, because there's quite a few of them throughout the episodes, are all from the game at some point.
The mermaid one I couldn't recall, but it was quite funny. Yeah. An algebra, a mermaid wears it to maths class.
I tried to stay up all night, then it dawned on me.
Yeah, I like them ones. They are funny. I wonder when they went through the joke book which ones they opted to keep in and ditch out. But yeah, we get the brilliant joke, and this is where Joel just like breaks. Like, whether he is tired or he genuinely thought it was hilarious, you can almost see, like, I'm not going to laugh at this, I'm not going to laugh at this, I'm not going to laugh at it. That's almost like just what makes it more funny. He kind of bursts, he explodes with laughter. That triggers Ellie to laugh, and we've all had that, right, with friends or family or loved ones, when something's just so funny you almost trigger each other back and forth, and when one person starts to wind down the laughing, the other one takes over and ups the tempo again, and you just end up going back and forth in stitches.
We've had it before when we've trying to like record a podcast. You and Rob will crack me up and something, and then all I'll do is I go, right, can't pause yourself, here we go, and then I look at you and I just fall to bits again.
This week, right? We did that this week on X
Pass,
I think.
So. Yeah.
Where it's like,
this week or last week.
Serious time. It's almost like a child, again, back to Ellie. Like, when you get in trouble.
I'm trying not to look at you.
Yeah. This is serious. You're not supposed to laugh. Like, we've just been killed today, Neely. You've now got a gun, apparently. We're sleeping next to broken glass with people hunting us all around the city. That levity must just be, like, utter relief of, like, yeah, that was hilarious. Let's, like, get out of our system. And again, yeah, it is a good joke. It runs in your genes, does diarrhea. Joel falls asleep, this time looking at Ellie, very important. Again, he's turned to face her. Maybe not the best thing when the door's behind you.
Yeah, I think it's that subconscious. He's now feeling more protective over her, so rather than having his back to her, he's more open to her, so he's now facing her. Like the kind of subtext in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Although we all know when we're asleep, right? I don't know about you. I toss and turn all the time. I'm left, I'm right, I'm on my back, I'm snoring, I do whatever. Sometimes I'm face down on my arm, and then I wake up and it's dead and I can't feel it. But we all go there. All the classic shapes that you do when you sleep. But then, yeah, you hear Ellie. Joel shouts at him, wakes up. Joel's got a gun in his face. Ellie's got a gun in her face. And we're introduced to Henry and Sam. Sam actually has the little the superhero motif painted on his face as well, which is good. Is going to be probably no doubt very endearing and cute in next week's episode. And then we end with essentially Joel and Ellie being held hostage by these two people who are apparently not nice people on the run from Kathleen's crew. And we cut to the end of the episode. Obviously, we don't get to spend that long with Sam and Henry. From the video game, we know a lot about them. Well, I mean, we think we know a lot about them. I do feel like their story is going to be very, very different. I mentioned on a previous week's show, I think, Sam is going to have some. He's going to bring in American Sign Language at some point. So I don't know if he's got a disability that Henry maybe has to adapt to, or it might create problems in a clicker infected filled world if you can't vocalize things. Maybe we'll hear more.
In fact, knowing sign language in a world when you sneak around past clickers might make things easier. You can communicate non-verbally.
Absolutely, and I'd love to see that
played.
I'd love to see that played out next week. If that's how they kind of sneak around so stealthy, how they move around without being caught is, like you said, because they can move without making a noise. But evidently, the glass trap was useless. I actually said because again, in the video game, you climb through a window on the run from the group, the bad guys, and Henry grabs Joel from behind as soon as he climbs in the window, and Ellie's about to stab him before they realise that there's another kid, and they basically become friends. And Henry explains that they're from an outside group who came into the city and they got hunted by these crazy bastards, and they basically team up to escape. And I feel like we're going to see a similar team up where Henry and Sam both want to escape the city. Joel and Ellie both want to escape the city, so that they've clearly got similar interests. But I do feel like Kathleen and Perry's relationship is going to come into it. There's going to be some dynamic that I feel like is going to involve Joel and Ellie a little bit more than we see in the games. And I guess before we wrap up all that, we've missed one quite important piece, actually.
Yeah.
The earthquake.
Flaws. Yeah, I wouldn't call it an earthquake. It's kind of like the floor of the basement in like the hideout where like Sam and I was going to say Sam and Perry, then Sam and Henry at once were staying. Well, we assume it's the same building. It could be a different building. Either way, Perry takes Kathleen to see this. They open the door in this basement and the floor's kind of pulsing.
Yeah.
That is kind of terrifying.
It's also nothing to do with the video games, from what we're aware. Yeah. So, what do you think it is? This pulsating floor?
I have a feeling that although we didn't see any infected this episode, this is the infected. They're going to break through. All hell's going to break loose next episode. And there's that scene in the trailer.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking
where
too.
You see the bloater come up and there's fire around, seemingly coming out of the hole in the floor. I think that's where the hole is.
But I completely agree. I think that's what my thought process is. There's going to be some kind of outbreak next week where there's going to be chaos everywhere, people getting killed left, right, and centre. And
the interesting thing though is Kathleen, no interest in dealing with it right now.
Yeah, she's like, just lock the door,
she's
Perry.
So laser focused on finding Henry, nothing else matters to her. And I think that will come back to play.
It should come back and bite her on the ass, because what a foolish thing to overlook.
Yeah,
an entire groundswell of concrete.
When she gives the order, Perry, just lock the place up. We'll deal with it later. Don't tell anyone about it. You kind of see Perry kind of do that whole thing. It's like, I know you're making the wrong decision, but I'm a soldier. I will follow orders.
Even though it's a dumbass decision.
And I think this is going to be the critical decision she makes. That basically probably leads to her own downfall in the next episode.
Yeah. I can't imagine she's long for this world, just by the nature of the show and that.
I wouldn't be surprised if Perry just lets him go at some point,
she falls in the hole. Give me your hand. He tries to save her because he really loves her, and then some bloater drags her into the hole. She should have sorted out this
Perry
week.
lets Henry and Sam go. He has the opportunity to take them out, but decides not to because he just sees Kathleen as just basically a lost cause.
Too far gone. Maybe. Of course, it'll be very interesting for the show because there's no telling of that in the video game. We don't know if infected dig tunnels or the blood. We know they reside in dark places and stuff.
You've got the strands going underground.
Mm-hmm. But it's just the groundswell. It seems to causing it.
Well, I was just thinking the roots almost.
Yeah.
The mycelia underground, and it seems to react to their presence a bit.
But
we've seen the little roots come out from the ground before and into the fingernails. But if this is bigger, if it's been longer there.
Yeah, this kind of network thing. Is it building tunnels? Is it expanding to new areas? And can it sense there's potential food nearby, I guess? Or not hosts, I guess, more than food. But it's an interesting take. I'm hoping it pays off because it's an odd pivot direction from what we see. Again, this could exist in the video games. We just never see it during Joel and Ellie's adventure. But interesting take. We'll no doubt see more about that next week, as I think this episode, again, being shorter and what happens in it, no one dies. at the end, other than poor Brian. But
and Brian's mate too,
and the Doctor, but again, unnamed people we don't really care about, NPCs. But then, yeah, I was left wanting more from this episode, and I could have done with, when it wrapped up, I thought, this could have been like another 20-30 minutes of telling the stories of these characters, give me a bit more context for Kathleen and Perry and why I should care about them. Maybe spend a bit more time with Sam and Henry. I'm sure they're going to be in the bulk of next week, but knowing who they are, I was like, we've only got a few episodes left after this, and if we need to wrap up their story and get to where we need to in the game with other characters such as David and the crescendo of Joel and Ellie's story, I'm kind of like, okay, we're run out of time now, because the rest of the series,
5 episodes left.
The rest of the series is about 50 minutes a pop per episode, though, so we've got no long ones left in the tank.
Yeah, I think this Kansas City is going to be resolved next week.
I would say
I think
so too.
we'll see Ellie and Joel leave Kansas City and everything that means, and then we've got basically 4 episodes left, and so they've got to probably almost immediately cut to like Tommy.
Yeah, but then David's quite a big story arc.
And then they've got the Left Behind kind of Ellie flashback stuff, which we know is in the show. There's 3 episodes if you just do 1 episode apiece, and then you got Fireflies at the end.
I guess my worry is this whole setup with Kathleen and Perry.
It's taking too much time.
Is it not only that, but is it going to lessen the impact of David and his crew? Because you've essentially got like an antagonist in Kathleen, even though we know she might not be that actually much of a bad guy. But then, like, it's almost like a mini boss before the next boss. But having them so close together episodically, are they going to be too similar? Like, are you going to be able to spend the time to hate them enough so when Joel and Ellie are the people we like and naturally overcome them? Is it going to be satisfying enough, or is Kathleen just going to be another throwaway person who, by episode 6, we just don't give a shit about anything she did or was about?
In which case, you could almost have just condensed these 2 episodes potentially just down to 1 longer episode and bring like Sam and Henry in a bit earlier and just cut Kathleen as a character.
Exactly.
It's like, I know why. I think her character is important because it's trying to humanize the hunters a bit.
Yeah. They're surviving for their own reasons. We just haven't seen their full really story.
This episode, I think we need the context of the show to kind of go, okay, is this a good or bad decision? Because this is why I said at the start, I have mixed feelings about Kathleen. It's like, if everything else from this point onwards is absolutely perfect, I have no issue with it. Fine, it's good. She's not a bad character or in any stretch of imagination. The only thing I have is it feels like this is like now taking away from things that they could do elsewhere. Because the whole, like, if they do Left Behind DLC with the whole Ellie flashback and how Ellie gets bitten, that's an entire episode.
Yeah.
Straight away. David could be an entire episode. Like,
more than one.
More than one, yeah. There's stuff with Tommy, like, there's maybe a couple of episodes in there if you wanted to. Then they got like, even the stuff like really at the end of the game, like.
We've got the factions multiplayer as well to get into. But realistically, I think we need to give credit where credit's due to Neil and Craig. They're setting this up for a reason. They know what they're doing, and I trust the payoff will be fantastic next week. After everything we've seen so far, completely trust them with it. Part of me does think we might have had a bit of a red herring in the marketing, though. I don't think season 1 is going to be the full game.
I hope not, actually.
Yeah, the pacing of it, I'd rather they ended earlier in the game, and when we get season 2 it picks like it doesn't need to be a cut and dry full stop and start. Like, they could end somewhere around David's storyline, or maybe catching up with Tommy, and Tommy and David have overlapped.
That's where I was thinking. Yeah, that's where I was thinking, is like Tommy could be a good endpoint, because ever since like we remake Joel after the outbreak, his whole thing has been trying to get to Tommy. So finishing season 1 with them getting to Tommy, and then season 2 you can actually pad out this like later in the later areas of the game a bit more. What
if we catch up with Tommy and David's killed him already?
I don't think they do that.
Or something worse, potentially. Tommy's on David's side, David's on Tommy's side.
Again, it doesn't feel right.
It doesn't, but depending if they want to make David to be like, again, it's all what we'll get into when I guess the shows come around. But I'm just thinking like how they can diverge and the way again, I don't want them to feel rushed to do this, but obviously we know the season 2 was greenlit, so it's happening. But did they secretly know behind the scenes it was going to be greenlit before? Like once they got episode 1 and 2 maybe in the bag and they knew it was going to be a good thing. Yeah, I think they will have knew, but we won't digress into that here. We'll round out this show with our typical awards of the week. Now, interesting enough, Richie, no one died this episode, so we can talk about what's to expect. Same with the look ahead to next week. I can't remember them showing that much from the look ahead. I don't remember if I watched it or not.
They did show a bit. It's not a lot. It just looks like more chaos. The more like riots in the streets. I think the bloater is in it.
Oh yeah, it was just more like kind of action.
And it's just random like
explosion, bit of violence here, searching through a building. We did see the clip where they seemingly go into Ish's sewer, which I think might be a nice bit of storytelling. I don't think we're going to meet Ish, unfortunately. I think anyone who likes the game, you missed that out. But yeah, it looks like a lot of just a random cuts, which is telling they don't want to give away any of the story, which again, I think Jin in the chat says, I hope this was a build-up for a spectacular episode 5.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that they're not even giving anything away in the trailer suggests there's going to be a lot of stuff that bubbles to the surface, especially if it is just whatever is under the surface in episode 4. Performance of the week, Richie. Chat, let us know your performance of the week. We traditionally tend to give it to the person who died. So, Brian?
Yep, Brian told me. No,
Brian steals it this week. Who's your money on this week for your performance of the week?
You know what? It's either going to be Pedro or Bella.
Oh. Who are you leaning towards?
I'm leaning towards Bella, actually. I think she showed a larger emotional range. Again, this is just, unfortunately for Pedro Pascal, playing a very closed-off character who's only just opening up at the moment. Where I think like Ellie did show a wider range of emotion, and I think Bella Ramsey absolutely nails it every time she's on screen. So it's like, it's the little details, like when like she's seeing Brian die and she's like kind of going back in tears, and all these, how she kind of sells them kind of moments, like the constant like dichotomy between like fascinated by the violence of the world they're living in, but also still being a semi-innocent 14-year-old girl. Like, it's almost at times she's playing two different characters that are in direct conflict with each other.
Yeah.
So I think for me it's Bella Ramsey.
I think that's a great summary, and I think
although Jeffrey Pierce's beard is awesome.
It is, but we can't give it purely based on his beard. Otherwise, we'd have to just go back and give it to Nick Offerman every single week, just because.
We did give it to Nick Offerman last week.
No, every single week, just because his beard's that awesome as well. But yeah, performance of the week, I think Bella Ramsey, she takes it. It probably won't be her last, I'm guessing, the way the whole series has been praised so far by journalists. But yeah, get it noted down. Louise in the chat says Brian could be performance of the week, but my condolences go to Brian's mum. She's just got some terrible news. Yeah, maybe next week we'll see that.
Yeah.
And
Brian, fantastic performance.
It was, yeah. Like, we joke, but yeah, his actual element of turning around, but it was short-lived, just like his character, unfortunately. So he doesn't quite get it this week. So Bella Ramsey, you claim your first title here on the ClickerCast. Congratulations. Moving on to our moment of the week, Richie. What part stood out this week that made you go, oh yeah, give me some of that?
Again, I think isn't a single stand. It's like episode 2 again, where there wasn't that really. It's quite hard to nail down like this a standout moment. With episode 3, it was the Bill and Frank. I like love me the way I want you to moment. Like,
go make me some toast.
Yeah, There's a lot of kind of sitting around in a car in this episode,
which I think that's why the episode felt quite slow, because portraying sitting in a car.
Ironically, they're going faster than they ever have.
Yeah, but portraying two characters sat in a car, you're not seeing that. Even though we saw loads of beautiful scenery, which we never even touched on, like going through like a ravaged world en route to Kansas. It does almost optically make it feel a bit slower, because we're not really doing much other than just sitting and talking.
Kind of cheat instead of picking a single moment. It's like kind of the moments between Joel and Ellie where you see them across the episode get closer and closer and like be a bit like more comfortable around each other. Like soften towards each other that are just sprinkled out throughout the entire episode. Because there isn't like a single scene where that you see a massive pivot in the relationship. It is these little things throughout the episode. So the nature of their relationship is different at the end than it is at the start of the episode.
So you want moments of the week, just collectively, all of their little interactions.
Just all these little interactions between Joel and Ellie, because I don't think there was, for me, a single, like, maybe Kathleen, like, interrogating the doctor.
Yeah.
But again, I thought it was a great
yeah.
scene, but I have mixed feelings about Kathleen. And as I said earlier, it depends on where the show goes, like when we get full context for her character.
Yeah. No, I'm willing to stretch the rules on this week, Richie, for that one as well. Yeah, moments of the week, collectively them.
Yeah.
Which, again, I don't think the end would have landed so funny with them bursting out laughing if we hadn't had all the prior moments. So, yeah, we'll give it to that one. Yeah. And final thing, of course, is because this is an adaptation of a phenomenal video game, an absolute masterpiece from Naughty Dog, best game adaptation of the week. What moment in this week's episode, Richie, and the chat, was your best video game adaptation on this week's episode?
How do you even walk around with that thing? No, I joke, but actually, it is probably the scene where, like, they get into, I was going to say Pittsburgh, then they get into Kansas City and the traps get sprung. That kind of sequence.
Yeah. It wasn't one for one.
The crash. It's not, but
it was faithful enough that, I think the build-up of the tension that we described earlier on and the actual play out of it was the same guy asking for help. It was the put on your seatbelt. It was the crash through the store, the fight that ensued after it.
There's a few small moments. There's like Joel boosting Ellie through a window and then like getting annoyed when he's like, Ellie, and she's just ignoring him and just then opens the door casually. He's like, that's kind of straight from the game. These kind of littler moments.
Yeah.
Ellie moving like a cabinet so Joel can get in. These are like kind of the little things that happen throughout the game that they're just going to get. I think again, these are just getting sprinkled in.
Yeah.
So it's like one of them when you see them. That's taken from the game. That's a game mechanic right there. Joel press triangle.
Yeah, yeah, triangle, absolutely. He didn't scavenge the car though. That would have been the first thing I did. Take everything out of the car. But yeah, I think I'd agree with that one as well.
I think you would have at least grabbed his backpack. Take a second, grab his backpack before he goes.
Just a couple of tins of that Chef Boyardee ravioli. Clearly was good enough to die for. But yeah, I think best game adaptation of this week is definitely when the trap was sprung in Kansas, not Pittsburgh. And that brings us to an end then, Richie, for episode 4 of our weekly, I was going to say Lord of the Rings then for some reason, The Last of Us roundup, right here on the ClickerCast. Please hold to my hand. It's been another great week for the show, and I can't wait to see where next week goes. Again, remember everybody that this week's episode or next week's episode will be this week, just to confuse you even more, because the show is airing early. We'll cover it, of course, here on Helix Plays Games on Sunday. Time to be decided, I guess, maybe closer to the time, Richie. If you want to check it out, it's going live on Friday over in the States, Saturday over in the UK, and it'll be exciting, but at the same time, that means we have to wait even longer for the following week. So it could be frustrating on the other side of things. But of course, we'll be back here to round it out. And you can catch it on youtube.com/Helix Plays Games and out there on your podcast service of choice up there in the digital clouds. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click that bell, and check out all our other wonderful content here on the channel. We do have a weekly PlayStation podcast, a weekly Xbox podcast, and of course we get together with you, the community, every week to play and stream games as well, usually on a Thursday, so do join us for that at some point. And if you want to keep up with fellow like-minded gamers and video game enthusiasts in general, check out our Discord. The link is in the description below. You can join up with us, and there's a lot of great people in our Discord server, Richie. A lot of Discord heroes, Helix heroes, supporters of the channel who really, really backed us and supported us while we branch out and do something a little bit different here at Helix Plays Games. So thank you to you. Thank you for everyone who's joined us tonight live in the chat. You're all wonderful. You're all absolutely amazing, and your input is very, very valuable to the contribution to this show. So to round things out, don't forget to run along to the comments, stalker us on social media at Helix Plays Games, clicker that notification bell, blow to yourself on all of our content, and above all else, endure, and survive. My name's been Chris.
I've been Richie.
We've been ClickerCast. See you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.